after news channel after news channel. Ever wonder why they report the same news? This is Wake Up America.
Brought to you by Citizen Stringer.
The media has become absolute lunacy. What makes us different? We just tell the truth. Daily headlines, politics, social issues, focusing on headlines that the mainstream media ignores. Conservative to the core and honest, sometimes to a fault. Unapologetically American. Welcome to Wake Up America with your host, Stephen Oatley.
Oh boy. You guys ready for this crap show? Same title as yesterday, right? Didn't even update the title on this video. How unprofessional. How you guys doing? My name is Steve. It is 7:52 on the East Coast. Today is the 19th. We just heard Joe Biden. Actually, we heard it a while ago. We heard Joe Biden speak to the American public for the first time in, I don't know, months. You know, and I saw, it's really weird, you know, just in case you didn't, I don't have any clips planned, but I do have a synopsis. We took notes. So I have a synopsis of his entire thing. So we're going to actually run through his entire press conference for you. Because it's just, this guy's seemingly oblivious to common sense in reality. Let's go that way. He's seemingly oblivious to reality. Common sense, we already know he has none. But, you know, some people were hoping that maybe he's still grasping onto, you know, some form of reality. Today he didn't. And to be honest, he put hundreds of thousands of lives at risk with his comments about Ukraine and Russia invading, and as long as it's just the tip and all that stuff, but we'll talk about all that. I'm live on social media because, again, this is an important one. All right. And if you guys like it on social media, then support me on social media. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, speaking of supporting, you know, Spartan Armor Systems is the major sponsor for this show. You can visit them at SpartanArmorSystems.com. They sell all sorts of incredible body armor, hats. I got one of their hats over here. Oh, yeah. One of their hats right here. Really nice. It's leather. It's one of the branded Bills kinds. Really nice. They also have pretty sick shirts. Body armor, you know, all the pouches and all the accessories that go on body armor, first aid kits, so much stuff over there. SpartanArmorSystems.com. Use code YEET and it gets you 10% off your order. If you're talking about a tactical level 4 ceramic set, you're looking at like $550. So that 10% does add up, and their body armor is top. Second to none. It's second to none. So go support them, because that is literally one of the ways that we pay for this, because no one sends YouTube super chats anymore. Anyway, where's this is what happens when I literally listen to morons all day. I like, my patience is gone. It's gone. So let's start. You know, I had something else I was going to rant about. I actually made a couple of videos today, and I never published them because I realized I was not as energetic as I typically am in some of these videos. So I decided that I would, oh my God. This whole show is basically going to be about Biden's press conference today. If you even want to call it a Biden press conference, it was bullshit. Anyway, Joe Biden started off saying it's been a year of progress, bragging about vaccinations, job creation, unemployment, child poverty, new business applications, etc., blah, blah, blah. Claims working people got a raise, which is bullshit because inflation's up 7%, highest it's been since before I was born, 1982. In June of 1982, inflation was, that was the second highest. I don't even know where inflation was, but we broke that record. Like, it's so stupid. He talks about vaccination rates. Okay, well, talk about what else the vaccinations are doing, but this isn't about COVID, so we're not even going to talk about that. He talks about child poverty. Oh my God, do you know what's happening in America? We can't even get anyone to work now. You're sending out child tax credits at $250 a month that's going out. That's his attempt at curing child poverty, even though that money is already, it's been going to kids at the end of the year with the tax returns. Well, if the parents are good and actually spend the child tax credit on their own children. He talks about job creation. Oh, we've added more jobs than any other previous. Name one president who's done more than we have. Fucking every other president. Every other president's done more because all he's done is inch himself back to where we were. So when he says he added all these jobs, no, our jobless numbers are still higher than what they were in February of 2019 before COVID hit and ravished the country. But nobody pays attention to that. They're like, oh, he added 6.2 million jobs. No, we added those back because we lost 9 million jobs when COVID set in. Nobody pays attention to those numbers. You're not adding any jobs. The unemployment rate is higher now than what it was then, but people are just blind to it. They don't care. So stupid. So his first opening statement was crap. He acknowledged frustration and fatigue, which he blames on his policies and governing approach, but it doesn't blame his policies or governing approach, but he blames that on Omicron. Not the fact that he's single-handedly destroying everything that everybody has worked for years and years. That doesn't matter. He also says he should have done more testing earlier in his administration, but they're working on it now. Advertises a government site that reportedly gets you tests, mailing them out in a week or two after you request them, which is kind of funny because I know people that are, a little bit on the crazy side. So they ordered some tests for themselves and they can't even get them. Other people were able to get them. They got notification within 48 hours that their tests are going to be sent to them within the next 2 weeks, which is pretty freaking stupid if you need to take the test in order to return to work. So their big plan of handing out all these tests to everybody that you get 3 weeks, how long do symptoms of Omicron or COVID or the flu or whatever you want to call it, how long do those symptoms even last? Do they last 3 weeks? Because if they don't, you're fucked anyway. Do you understand? It's so stupid. The way that everyone is fawning over this stuff without actually using a little bit of common sense. It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling. He said, COVID, quote, we're in a better place than we've been, clearly better than a year ago, says schools should stay open. We're not in a better place. People are panicking over a flu. That's what they're panicking over right now. Panicking. People, shit, we had a major victory in our own town, our school district, when the school districts, finally, the school board voted 5-1 to allow the kids to go on masks starting on Monday. Both of my kids are elated. My wife and I, our kids haven't been in school since last week because of all the snow and the day will snow here, so they closed school down, even though it's been sunny and 50 today, there was no school. Anyway, my kids haven't had asthma. They haven't had asthma. Now, this could be attributed to the fact that my house is now cleaner than it's ever been because I spent 16 hours and then had a professional crew come in after I did it to clean our house after all the soot debacle that happened when our furnace exploded. It could be that, or it could be the fact that they're not wearing a mask when they're both severe asthmatics. But my kids are elated. Other school districts in this state are not so fortunate. Augusta County, Richmond County, Alexandria County, Fairfax County, several other counties in Virginia are going against the governor's orders, saying that they're not going to follow them. They all said that they blindly had to follow the last idiot, Northam's. They all had to follow his guidance, but now Youngkin is governor, and they don't have to. Anyway, I just got sidetracked. Whatever. This is one that really pissed me off. He acknowledges supply chain problems, but claims that there has not been a crisis. What? Are you like, okay, whatever. He says there's not been a crisis in that shelves were stocked thanks to his actions, which is completely mind-bogglingly dumb if you've ever been to a store. If you've been to a store and you see an empty shelf, therefore you can fact check him all you want. It's false. What he said is false. My wife went to a store here. We live in a town of 5,000 people. Okay, we have a distribution center for one of the food chains that delivers here, not even far away. There were empty shelves in the local store here. We're not even in a big town like DC or New York City or any of these other places that are seeing empty shelves. I actually posted it on Twitter. It was the whole frozen potato section because my wife loves that section. There was no fucking potatoes. Like, it's a potato famine of 2022. It's insane. And he says, well, there's been no supply chain crisis. How do you figure there's been no supply chain crisis? We are currently in a supply chain crisis. They just passed the infrastructure bill, which included the Drive Safe Act, which puts 18-year-old truck drivers on the road in interstate commerce to try to fix the supply chain crisis. And he says there's no supply chain crisis. They're putting kids behind the wheel of 80,000-pound missiles because of said crisis. So freaking dumb, but okay, whatever. It's you voted for him, right? 80 million, 88 million, however many invisible people voted for the guy. He claims his policies are reducing the prices of key items. Inflation is up all over everything. Look at the gas price. You think gas is a key item? I think it's a key item. Look at where gas prices are now. This guy is And I'm only in the first 2 minutes of his speech, guys. So just, you know, we have a lot. It's going to be a lot of nonstop craziness that's going on. You know, if you didn't watch his speech, all you have to do is watch his video, and then you'll get the gist. He says if price increases are what you're worried about, the best answer is his plan, the Build Back Better plan. Like, remember, prices have increased already, and if you don't like that the prices are increased, you better get behind his plan, which increased the prices in the first place. Go figure this man out. Nobody, like, you would think right there, a reporter would be like, sir, Mr. President, I got to ask you a question. You just said your prices have caused, or your plan has caused prices to go up. And now you're saying the only way to get prices, if you don't like that, the only way to fight that is to back your plan, which is what caused the prices to go up in the first place. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. He says, we recently faced some of the biggest challenges we've ever faced, public health, economy, but we're getting through it, he says, and laying the foundation for future. Admits he needs to get inflation under control, which is not going to happen. He's not going to get inflation under control. We're about to go to war with Russia. You think we have an inflation problem now? Oh my God! Wait till we're in a wartime economy again. And truly, I believe this is getting sidetracked. I believe that's the only way that Joe Biden is going to come out of any of this anyway, or the Democrats as a whole, is if we go to war. No joke. I firmly believe that's why everything that's happening with Russia is a big op. But Biden's probably like, Putin, when are you going to do this shit, man? I'm losing the people here. Got a 33 approval rating. Let's go. I'm going to be really stern on the phone, but everyone thinks I'm batshit crazy anyway, so it doesn't matter. So when I do a press conference, the one that I do like once a year, yeah, I'm going to say some stupid shit, and it's going to cause our partners, Ukraine, to freak the fuck out because I'm going to say, oh, let's just give up a little bit of your country. Fucking idiots. Idiots. And then, so that was his whole opening statement, okay? And then the first reporter lists off some of the country's major problems and then gently asks, did you overpromise what you could achieve, and how do you plan to correct it? And then he says, why are you such an... Oh, my God. This was when I knew that this press conference was going to be gold, because he said, why are you such an optimist? And then he said, I didn't overpromise. He said, what did he say? He said he didn't overpromise. I guess I didn't write it down. I did tweet it, though, but I don't know where it is. He said, I didn't overpromise. I may have, oh, God, what is the word? Outperformed or something like that. Oh, I forgot. But he said something really stupid. I'm like, holy shit, this guy is nuts. Did he really just say he's doing well? Outperformed? No, it wasn't overachieved. I'm looking at the chat to see if one of them tell me real quick. Off the rocker. I may have off the rocker. No, that wasn't it. I don't know. It's on my tweet. I'm not going to look. But he said, I didn't overpromise, and adds that you have to acknowledge his enormous progress, but says his one failure is getting Republicans, who he recently disparaged without substantiation of vile, evil, racist comments, trying to destroy the country to get in the game. Outperform is what he said. He said he's outperforming his goals. Oh my God. If he's outperforming his goals, what's his long-term plan? You know what I mean? If destroying our country this much in over a year, or in not even a year, it's a year tomorrow at noon. That's when hell froze over. But like in just under a year, 64 days, if he's done this much damage to the country, what's going to happen in the next 3 years? Seriously. And I'm not trying to scare you. I mean, you should be scared. All the people that voted for him should be scared. Anyway, he said, I did not anticipate such a stalwart effort to make sure he didn't get anything done. Name me one thing they're there for, Biden says of the Republicans. I'll be honest with him. I kind of agree with that. I don't know why the Republicans are here. I was listening to all these speeches today on the Senate floor. Not one of those idiots represent me, and I do have a little monologue thing that I'm going to do after, but I want to warn all politicians out there, whether you're Republican or not, you keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to have a whole new breed of aspiring politicians that are going to be running for office. You're going to have young kids, you're going to have veterans, you're going to have actual people that know what it's like to actually work every day, that are going to take your jobs and that are going to make this country great again. You're going to have to actually go back to doing something real with your life. But we'll talk about that later. What else? Contrary to a stay-at-home posture of recent years, he said he's going to go out on the road and campaign for Democrats and make the case that his first year has been a huge success and make the case that more needs to be done. Can you imagine if Joe Biden decides to try to go on the road with Democrats that are campaigning for what campaign manager would ever allow Joe Biden to go on the road with them? Can you just imagine? Joe Biden's people, they're like, hey, shitbird leftist from Colorado. Joe Biden wants to make an appearance at your campaign rally. No, please don't. No. I'm trying to distance myself. That people will say the distance myself from the nutbags on the right. And now you have to distance yourselves from the nutbags on the left. Because Joe Biden fits that category of nutbags, right? Right? And we do have them on the right. No one is going to pretend like on the right everyone's perfect, because that's bullshit too. We have some crazy ass people on this side of the aisle as well. Anyway, ABC reporter said it's not the GOP, but his own party who's blocking his legislative goals right now. Do you need to be more realistic and scale down these priorities to get something passed? He says no, he doesn't. This is supposed to reset, and thus far included no resetting, mostly the insistence that things are actually going quite well. I don't know how you can make that argument. Biden, who has said that if his voting bill doesn't pass, the election will not be legitimate, is asked if he actually believes that. He gives an unclear answer. He actually does go back and say that he doesn't believe the 2022 elections are going to be legitimate. They literally have been campaigning since November of 2020 about the election and how the right is saying it's illegitimate and blah, blah, blah. And then you have the current president right now, before the election is even taken months away, already forecasting that the election is not going to be legitimate. All the midterms, they're not going to be legitimate. He's going to have blah, 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 blah. These people are nuts. These people are nuts, man. I'll be honest, they're nuts. Completely bonkers. And all those reporters in the White House, there weren't any good questions. Everyone got a big rise. The guy said, the Newsmax host that got up there and was like, are you mentally fit? Is there anything wrong with you? And he's like, I don't know. So everyone got a big rise, being like, yay, why didn't you ask like a real question? Because at that point, he had already talked about Afghanistan and said he had no regrets. See, I'm skipping. Let me go in order, okay? Biden does his old man whisper thing and asked if he's going to actually do anything to keep schools open. He whispers that most are open and says there's a ton of funding has gone to buildings to keep them safe. Because that's what he does when he talks. He whispers like a creep. And then he yells. And then he whispers. Actually, he doesn't sound like that when he yells. He sounds like a feeble old man, but whatever. I don't know how to do that sound effect. He won't commit to fighting teachers unions who are banning children from schools. It says that schools are open. It's just irrelevant. Oh, you mean teachers unions are not allowing kids to actually learn anything anymore because they're going on strike? Don't worry. The schools are open, though. Even though there's no teachers to teach the kids, the schools are open because he's so connected with the American people right now. Reporter asked about confused Biden administration response to Putin troop buildup on the Ukraine border. Biden says Russia will be held accountable. Says if it's a minor incursion, maybe one thing, but if it's a big incursion, there will be a disaster for Russia in terms of sanctions. So what he just said, and I want everyone to understand that while Biden was speaking, according to all the CNN reporters and Fox News reporters and everybody that's over in Kiev, Ukraine right now, thinking that there's going to be a big invasion, they're sitting there listening to all these Ukrainian lawmakers that are sitting watching Joe Biden, their ally, say, well, as long as they only take a little part of the country, we're not going to do shit. If people don't think war is inevitable, guess what? It is. There's without a doubt in my mind, Russia is going to push into Ukraine, and then the United States is going to go, and Joe Biden's going to be a feeble old man, and Kamala Harris is going to be hiding in the basement somewhere because she's not, she's apparently going to run with Joe Biden in 2024 if he's around. But it's so stupid. And I mean, even CNN is now heavily criticizing criticizing Joe Biden for his comments about Ukraine because now Russia is like, oh, wait, shit. Putin's sitting there with a shirt off riding a horse, and he's riding around with his buddies. And he's like, hey, guys, you hear Joe Biden today? Yeah, he said, as long as we take a small piece, we're good. So let's go take that shit. Like, it's going to happen. Whether they like it or not, it's going to happen. Next. New York Times reporter says that Biden told reporters months ago that the thing Putin wanted was a Cold War. He lists some of Putin's aggression and asks if Biden's view of him has changed. If so, and if he does invade, would Biden move back to Cold War containment posture years ago, like we had years ago? Biden said, how could I say this in a public forum? Says Putin is dealing with a tragic loss of an empire and demise of the Soviet Union, trying to find a place in between China and the West. Says he's not sure if Putin is certain what he'll do, although Biden thinks he will invade. Like he said that. He said that. So Biden says, as long as they take a little part, it's okay. And then he's like, and I think they're going to do that. Like, it's so insane that this man is the president of the United States. And I know what they're doing. Our economy is in shambles. Americans' morale right now is low as shit. I mean, think about it. Do you wake up every day saying, whoa, it's great to be an American? No, you wake up and say, fuck, this shit sucks. You do. I do. I do it every day. You know, I stretch out, hit my wife on accident because she's still in bed because the schools are canceled for no apparent reason whatsoever. And then I wake up and I'm like, well, great. I'm going to report on some shitty ass news again. Oh, great. I got to work all day. I got to deal with social media. I got to be in all these. I'm not like, yeah, you know what? This is going to be the land of opportunity for me today. You know, it's going to be great. No. Anyway, Biden said he could work with Putin on parts of what Putin wants, and Ukraine is not ready to join NATO, and said so there is room to work, and he says he probably should go any further. Not well articulated, but not awful policy. I disagree with that note. USA Today asked if he's breaking up his spending package and also asked if he's considering forcing vaccinations for travel. Remember, there's a lot of speculation that because the OSHA mandate was kicked down by the Supreme Court, that one of the things, and then the vaccination or the mask mandate was upheld by the Supreme Court for international airline travel or for airline travel. Now there's a lot of speculation that that's the next thing that's going to come down, is that they're going to put a vaccination requirement for domestic air travel because they already have it for international air travel. Which apparently means that terrorists that got into the United States, that was on the terrorism watch list in the UK, that, you know, held people hostage at that synagogue this past week, and he must have been vaccinated, because how else could he have gotten here? But story for another day, right? So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen with that. A lot of people criticized the way they were asking the questions, because you got softball questions and you got hard. You never really got any hard questions, but there are a lot of, like, they didn't follow anything. So, like, they would talk about one thing and they just flop to something else, which is really annoying. And then this was the next thing. The Wall Street Journal asked about inflation and asked if he's admitted he's limited in what he could do if his spending package doesn't pass and the Fed doesn't do anything. Biden said inflation has everything to do with supply chain, but then again, he said the supply chain, we're not in a supply chain crisis. He says inflation has everything to do with the supply chain, but just like 10 minutes before, he said, there's no crisis. Stores are shelved. Our stores are, shelves are stocked. It's great. Don't let me near your kids. That's what I imagine every time he whispers. That's what I think he says. If you can't tell, if you're watching for the first time, I don't like him at all. I think he's a horrible human being, like evil at the core, at the heart. If he has one, it's black. Anyway, CBS says McConnell says midterms will be a report card on Biden administration. No, they're not. They're going to be the midterms are going to be like Biden go to detention for the next 2 years. That's what the midterms are going to be. Because what do we have? Are we up to 28 Democrats right now that are not running for re-election? 28? 28? And we better go out. You guys better start campaigning. Every single person who's watching these feeds right now, you need to do it. My show for the next year is going to turn into a political show. I'm going to start interviewing political candidates everywhere. I'm going to call congressional candidates. I'm going to call local candidates. I'll go out to the rallies and cover them if we have to. But that's what this is, because I can't run for office. I'm too much of a hothead. Can you imagine if I'm sitting in Senate and I'm waiting my turn to say something and they're like, oh my God, all Republicans are racist, white supremacists, bigots. I would lose my shit. I wouldn't be able to do it. There's no way in hell. I don't have that off filter that would allow me to be able to be like, oh, my what do they call him? My colleague. Oh, my colleague from Georgia. Yeah. Oh, you want to say that about my family? No, I'd smash him. That's just who I am. Anyway, Biden says they don't have a single GOP vote as his buddy John McCain is gone, blah, 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 because they don't. Because why would Republicans vote for something that is going to destroy this country? No matter what, even if you're talking about the election, if you're talking about the voter integrity, they literally want to make it so people don't have to prove that they're U.S. citizens and still would be able to cast a vote. You could register on the day, on election day. I agree with the making it a federal holiday. I talked about that last night. I don't know why it isn't. I thought it was until like a couple of days ago, to be completely honest with you. Didn't even know it wasn't. But all the others not having ID, all the different shit that they're, and then the taxpayer, even though they say it's not taxpayers from IRS fines, but a 6-to-1 match for donations for people that are running for Congress. Fuck that. I don't want any part, if I get fined by the IRS or I get fined by somebody, I don't want any part of anything going towards anyone's political campaign unless I'm the one contributing to it directly, which I don't do. You know why? And I don't think I've ever contributed to a political campaign, because there's not a single damn politician that represents who I am and what I value. We'll talk about that at the end. If you think I'm energetic now, wait till the end of this fucking thing. Oh my goodness. Biden claims that 5 GOP senators secretly agree with him but can't vote because they'd be defeated in primaries. Yeah, and I can guarantee who they are. It's probably, Romney, because he's sellout. Kinzinger, not a Republican. Cheney, not a Republican. And who are the others? 2 other ones. Crenshaw, probably, because that guy's really proven himself to be worth nothing now. And just, take a 5th one that you want. They would be defeated in primaries. Oh my gosh. There's nobody I don't even think Democrats agree with Joe Biden and his policies, because I don't even know if he knows what his policies are. You could ask him tomorrow morning. It's like every morning when you wake up, that Adam Sandler movie where he has to read a diary and basically figure out, so I said this yesterday. Ooh. What's my name? Oh, Joe Biden. Okay. And then he goes and takes off his diaper and he starts his day. Biden says that the state efforts to restore any integrity to voting are, in his view, unconstitutional. Oh my gosh. He says that state efforts to restore any integrity into voting are, in his view, unconstitutional, and that he's using his extremely politicized DOJ to go after them. You mean it's unconstitutional for a state to oversee its own elections and pass laws to pass election integrity? Oh my goodness. To make sure the signature on the ballot matches, that's unconstitutional, you idiot. You know why? It's because they want to use all the loopholes that happened in the November election, all the different policies that were put into place because of COVID lockdowns, because they realize that Americans are not going to go through that again. I'll be honest, with Omicron and all that and all the big news about it, I really thought that everyone's going to freak out, and they are, mind you. There's been numerous cases of people completely losing their shit, but most of them are like, hey, wait, I got vaccinated. I got triple vaccinated, boosted. I wear 17 masks when I go into Whole Foods, and I yell at the unvaccinated, and I go on Twitter and I call them unvaccinated, and I still got COVID. What the fuck, Joe? What the fuck, Biden? They're so mad because, it doesn't matter. But now they're on a race to get everyone vaccinated, so there is no control group. And then we'll see what happens with that in a couple of years. But the vaccines are safe and all that stuff, right, YouTube? Right, YouTube? Now you can see why I hate talking on YouTube. The questions are embarrassingly weak. Where's the figure? Blah, blah, blah. Reporter gives Biden an opportunity to clean up a previous answer that when he seemed to give permission to invade Ukraine a little bit. They chuckle about the whole thing. He doesn't really give an answer, though. Another question about Russia, even though the press conference is full of outlandish Biden claims about Biden domestic policy being a success, even a huge success. Welker says that Black Americans she interviewed say that Biden's racialized voting push is more about Biden not having helped out Black voters with what they really want and need versus anything else. And then it just goes on to some bull crap. They asked if Biden is satisfied with Kamala Harris' work on voting rights and whether she will be the running mate. And he said, yes, she is going to be his running mate in 2024. I didn't hear a lot of news reporting that he said if he runs. I didn't hear that, so maybe he did say that. But he said he's really proud of her work in the voting. What fucking work? Has anyone even seen her? I know she went on like George Stephanopoulos the other day, Snuffleupagus, and didn't say shit. She, stupid ass laugh every time she gets nervous, and she really had nothing to say. Oh, and our border is really under control, right? How many people crossed last month? 180,000 people, whatever. Yeah, it's not to mention all the gotaways, right? The people that didn't get apprehended, the people that didn't want to get apprehended, like, you know, the terrorists and the drug smugglers, sex traffickers, all those really good people that they want to make it easy for them to go in and cast a vote. I wonder if they'll place advertisement in Spanish saying, "Hey, free citizenship, come and vote." I don't know. They'll probably do some shady shit like that. I bet that's already been done by somebody. And again, I don't have a lot of faith in our election on either side either. I think all the shit politicians do behind the, you know, curtains is just dirty as hell. So I don't want people that may be tuning in for the first time to be like, wait, how come he's just shitting on liberals? No, I shit on Republicans too. I'm no longer a Republican. I seriously, if I could change my thing, I think I already registered as an independent. I don't like the Republican Party for what they stand for today. This thing that I've been seeing today on television disgusts me. All these Republicans getting up here and talking about this and that and voting right, blah, blah, blah. It's all weak. It's all posturing. They're all trying to get some big fancy sound clip, and that's it. Thank you, Chris, for that YouTube super chat. I think that's the first one today. Let's see 500 more. You like me doing these shows? You like me running through your day's news in a super high-strung way? Let's get some super chats going, all right? We need your support so we can support our families and stuff here. Anyway, next. Biden acknowledges Afghanistan withdrawal problems, but blames Trump for locking him into it last year. Difficult to do, blah, blah, blah. And then he said he wouldn't do anything differently, which is incredibly concerning, considering 13 U.S. American soldiers died, hundreds of Afghan allies died, and numerous other troops were injured in that whole debacle of the withdrawal. But don't worry, all you guys that voted for that guy to go in office because you didn't like Orange Man and all that stuff, don't worry. He doesn't regret anything that caused the death of those soldiers over there. Great job voting for a scumbag. Anyway, but Biden said he thinks he's done remarkably well about when he's questioned about deep public concerns with government incompetence. I mean, if he said, "Oh yeah, I completely agree," it's very, very concerning. No, of course he's going to say, "Oh yeah, we did really well," because he's living in his own bubble where he thinks he's doing well, but he's not. And then he blamed Trump and all that stuff. Biden says that now critical crimes or crisis are, yeah, you know what? I thought that was really weird because he was, at one point today, he was basically saying that now that all the big stuff's out of the way, he could focus on getting out of the White House, going to see people, having public forums, speaking to people that write editorials in newspapers. Like all these, he's going to really open it up. He's going to have public forums and get the citizens, but man, can you imagine if Joe Biden just walks into your town? He's like, "Guys, I'm holding a public forum. Tell me how you really feel." They won't even do that. The guy literally reads from a cue card to get to reporters, and then he gets ready to go. Ryan Sims with a $5 super chat. Let's go. Let's go. Hillbilly hippie bitch. Let's go. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm going to shout him out when you guys do the super chats because now Restream did the whole thing. Look, check this out. You can't really see it there. Oh yeah, where is it? Restream did it, so now I can see them when they come through. So I'm gonna call them out because I want you guys to do it. I want you to send them. Someone said not soldiers, a soldier, a corpsman. Donna with the $10. They're soldiers, military. Yes, I'm not former military, so I may not have used appropriate jargon. Marines and the corpsmen, they were soldiers. They're still, military people that died over there. I'm not trying to minimize it at all. Anyway, so they got done with the regular press conference at that point. Lou Red with $50 super chat. Whoop, whoop. Then they got done with the initial part of the conversation. Right? And then he's like looking at his watch and he's like, "Okay, we'll ask some more questions." Peter Ducey's like, "Hey, Mr. President, pick me. And he's like, "I bet you got a bunch of questions that kind of go back and forth." Susan with a $20 super chat. Thank you. And then he goes on Peter Ducey says, why are you trying so hard in the first year to pull the country to the left? Of which Joe Biden said, what do you mean? No, the left is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is my friend, but I'm no socialist. Just isolating everybody else. So stupid. The exploding kitten with a $50 super chat, and God rides a Harley with a $5 one. Yeah. God rides said, I'm done. It's over. We're sick of it. So run for office, God. Seriously. Run for office. I'll be everyone's chief of staff for your campaigns. If you say you're going to run, I'll be your campaign manager. We'll throw rallies. That's what we need. We need the American citizen, shouldn't even register. You have to win with that red, whatever. Fuck it. It doesn't matter. I'll talk about that after. I'm so annoyed. What else? What else was it? It says, why do you try so hard in your first year to pull the country left? Biden notes that nearly all Democrats agree with him. But Biden's approval ratings are the result of policy shared by the entire party. Biden's approval ratings are at 33%, something like that, which is pretty bad. Someone else asks Biden a question, and he yells at him and says, go back and read what I said, to reporter Phil Wegman, beginning to ask a mild question about Biden's comparison of political opponents to racists, then reiterates the thing that got everyone mad. It's so stupid. Biden is trying to say that all that speech that everybody watched before, remember that speech that everybody watched? That on his voting rights, and everyone took offense because he said, if you don't support these voting rights, you're a racist, basically, by saying some Bo guy and someone else. I don't remember. Ethel with $20 super chat. Thank you. Steve is truth to power. 11 times. Said, let's go, Brandon, with a big middle finger. Yeah, let's go, Brandon. Anyway, and then he yells and says, and then he goes to chastise that reporter, saying, yeah, you're a journalist. It must mean you like to write. Trying to attack his credibility for asking a question when everyone, the greater American public, believes that Joe Biden was saying anyone who doesn't back his voting laws or voting rules and all that stuff is going to be labeled a racist, which he does anyway. They did that today. They're doing it right now on the Senate floor. Anyone who doesn't back this is racist. They're calling them bigots and all that stuff. That's what they're doing. Chris Johnson with a $50 super chat. Thank you. Are you my buddy, Chris, from New Jersey? I don't know. What else? All right, let's go back. James Rosen brings up a political morning consult poll finding that 49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement that Joe Biden is mentally fit, saying, asking, why do you suppose such large sentiments have come to harbor such a profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? To which Joe Biden says, when he's asked about why do so many people think he's crazy, he goes, I have no idea. You couldn't really even make that up. When people said, why do people think you're crazy? And he's like, I don't know. Why do they think I'm crazy? I really don't know. It's so stupid. Someone said, can you think of any president, or Joe Biden says, can you think of any president who's done as much in 1 year? I'm serious. And you know what? I'll take that back. I don't think I can think of any single president that has done so much to destroy our country in a single year. I don't know. Biden, who apparently believes his is a good question, thinks his goal is to do positive things for the country, not negative things. or the goal is to do positive things instead of negative things. Reporter pushes for vaccination of people under 5 with the caption, who are these people? I think that was at the point where April sent me a message and goes, that's it, we're fucked. She sent me a Slack message and I forgot what it was, and I probably shouldn't read her messages out, but it was funny because I just laughed because I was thinking the same thing. She's like, we are so fucked. We need a countdown clock that tells us how many days we have left of this moron. And it's not just them, it's everybody. It's the Democrats, it's the media. I mean, and I'm going to talk about the NPR article and all that after, but a lot of people, and then he goes on to ask a couple more questions. He goes back and forth. He keeps checking his watch. And then finally he says, everyone asked me really quick, easy questions so I could give easy answers. And he's trying to be funny, but really the press corps is like, idiot. But that's what they are. But there was your rundown of that. I just broke down his hour and 20-minute speech or hour 30-minute speech, whatever it was. I just broke that down. And how long have I been live? I can't even tell because it just recycled the live stream. So however long this has been live, I just did that for you. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I'll cut that tomorrow and just put that out for a recap of his speech. All right, so let's talk about NPR, because this was my rant earlier today, right? So you guys may have read this. I forgot what her name was, Tina or Lena or some shit news article or news writer for NPR. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, NPR is not federally funded per se. They 2% of their funding is received from grants from the federal government, but it's not taxpayer money because people are stupid and they think the federal government can spend money that's not taxpayer money, which doesn't make any sense. It is taxpayer money. But NPR is 2%, federally funded. That's the number that they give, and then it's corporate donors and all that stuff. NPR published a scathing report of the Supreme Court yesterday, and it's not a surprise why they did it, but they said Justice Gorsuch and Justice Sotomayor that, $20 nanners, thank you, that Sotomayor, or that Chief Justice Roberts told Gorsuch and all the other people, all the other justices, that they had to wear masks, and except they didn't. Right? And so Sotomayor wouldn't appear there in person because she has diabetes and blah, blah, blah. And they went on this whole big thing. And we didn't write anything because it was stupid and we knew it was false. And Fox News, I don't believe they published an article on it, but they did, or they probably did now because they kind of uncovered this whole thing. Turns out the whole thing is fake. Okay? So much so that the Supreme Court had to issue an extremely rare statement on media reports saying it's fake, which is the craziest thing. Chris Johnson with a $50 super chat again. Thank you, dude. It's so stupid because the Supreme Court, first, Gorsuch and Sotomayor issued a joint statement saying they were really surprised by this news article because, well, it's not true. It's false. They're friendly. There's never been an issue between the two of them. Now, the leftist media, even though that to a normal person, you would say, especially, coming from a journalistic perspective here, normally at that part, if you are the writer of said article, which we would never be at Citizen Stringer because we don't make up the news, we actually report it. But you would sit there and you'd be like, you'd reach out to your source if you really had one. And then you'd be like, what the fuck? You lied to me. Like, that's what you would do if you were an honorable reporter. But what the left media does, and everyone, I saw right-leaning news outlets also wrote this article without fact-checking it, post-millennial. You did it as well. And then you do a little retraction later. No, you still wrote a fake fucking article without doing anything yourself. You'll never find that kind of reporting on Citizen Stringer. We just don't do it. Anyway. All these left-wing news outlets took that statement, the joint statement from Sotomayor and Gorsuch, and said, well, that doesn't dispute this news article because the news article said Roberts told Gorsuch to wear a mask and Gorsuch didn't do it because he's a conservative justice and, oh my God, and Trump is a mean guy. So they were trying to portray that the story was still factual, even though it was disproven by the two subjects that they listed in the story. So then the Supreme Court again has to issue an extremely rare public statement to the media saying, and this time it was Chief Justice Roberts said, I never told Gorsuch to wear a mask, nor did I tell anyone else to wear a mask. That's it. Not talking about it anymore. And then he went back into his bat cave. And then you know what the media does? Instead of doing retractions and all that, they just shut the hell up. They don't talk about it anymore. They're just like, you know what? Nobody's wiser. The only one that's reporting on this is Fox News, and we could just call them insurrectionists later. So crazy. And that's a big thing. It just shows how divisive they are. And you know damn well that the reason why they targeted the Supreme Court is because the Supreme Court ruled on and vacated the OSHA mandates. That's the reason why the leftist media is like, oh, we got to get the Supreme Court. They had a win today when the Supreme Court said that they're not going to take up the Trump case on having all his emails and everything read through the J6 commission, which it's all fucking irrelevant anyway. Any real American knows that what's going on in the J6 commission is bullshit. I am someone that firmly believes that we do need a J6 commission, a real one, not this fake one that they're doing here where they're not looking into the actual issues on what happened that day, because it's supposed to be a meeting about what happened that day, where the failures were that day. Why did Chief Son request 7 times to have National Guard and backup, and it was all withdrawn? Why were the National Guard troops that Donald Trump offered over to them refused by Nancy Pelosi and the House Sergeant at Arms? Those kind of questions aren't going to get answered. In fact, they're already on record saying that they're not going to ask any questions of Nancy Pelosi. So it is what it is. But what the media does is that they try to attack. It doesn't matter. They just try to attack anything that, goes after them. So right now, NPR is not doing anything. I don't know. Is that article even still up? It was as of like 6 p.m. today. Actually, I think I still have that page open and I could check real quick while I zoom in on my face. I tried to keep the article open. Yeah, look, article NPR, blah, blah, blah. Yep, it's still up. Not even edited. They didn't even edit it. This is their article with NPR. It was pretty jarring early this month when the justices for the U.S. Supreme Court took the bench for the first time since Omicron surge over the holidays. All were now wearing masks. All, that is, except Justice Neil Gorsuch. What's more, Justice Sonia Sotomayor was not there at all, choosing instead to participate through a microphone setup in her chambers. Sotomayor has diabetes, a condition that puts her at high risk for serious illness or even death from COVID-19. She has been the only justice to wear a mask on the bench, blah, 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 blah. And then this is where it gets crazy. Now, though, the situation has changed with the Omicron surge, and according to court sources who do not exist, I added that last part there, Sotomayor did not feel safe in close proximity to people who were unmasked. Chief Justice John Roberts, understanding that in some form, asked other justices to mask up. They all did, except Gorsuch, who, as it happens, sits right next to Sotomayor on the bench. His continued refusal since then has also meant Sotomayor has not attended the justices' weekly conferences in person, instead joining by telephone. Gorsuch, from the beginning of his tenure, has proved a prickly justice, not exactly beloved even by his conservative soulmates on the court. Now, it turns out the whole story is fucking false. Like, it's so dumb. Like, that article is not even meant to report. You list court sources. Those court sources do not exist. It was someone that lied to you. And find out who those court sources are and fire them, if they even really exist. I wouldn't doubt that this reporter, Nina Totenberg, with National Public Radio, made this whole thing up. Because the rest of it, the court's liberals are upset. And it just goes back and forth just to attack the justices for their policies and what they're going on. It's just disgusting. The way our country acts right now is just disgusting. It's just frustrating. But then again, the media just says, you know what? Guess what? We don't care. We're not going to be honest. We're not going to report it. It doesn't matter. You know? Oh, where's Trump today? Oh, God, the Attorney General from New York has found that Donald Trump's, thing may have done something with something. You know what I mean? It's always something. That's the scapegoat. So here's the real thing. What all you guys need to do, disgusting, what all you guys need to do, besides send super chats right now, I want tonight to be the biggest super chat night. I'm on a roll. And if you want me to be this energetic when we do the show, come on, man, hit it up. Hit it up so I don't have to go get big-ass corporate sponsors, because otherwise I'm going to do that, all right? I'm going to do that. And I set up a new camera. I mean, fucking A, right? I got the blue lights over there. I could get a strobe light, got all them. Steve's back. Anyway, what else? What the hell was I going to talk about? I don't remember. Oh, yeah, the media just being shady as shit, because that's what they are. What else? Oh, so I was going to go on my rant about what everyone should do. There was this little speech that was given by Democrats earlier today in front of the somewhere in Congress, and they were talking about how Republicans are doing this, and they're like, "What happened to the Republican Party?" So I have a message for everyone that's curious. What happened to the Republican Party? It's changing, and it's not changing to the worse. It's not all MAGA people or anything like that. What it is. And I don't even want to say the Republican Party. I'll just say I can speak for everyone that feels like me. We are tired. It doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican. If you watch these hearings today, and I saw like leftists getting triggered by some of the rhetoric that was coming out from other Democrats today. people are tired. People are tired of this. You know, you got Patrick Leahy going in there and being like, I've been in Congress for 47 years. I am 37 years old. Do you understand that means Patrick Leahy has been in office 10 years before I was even born? How can he possibly know what it's like? Imagine like all these people that are in prison for 47 years. They get out and they're like, holy shit, is that a flying car? No, sir, it's a Prius. Like, they don't know. It's the same thing that Patrick Leahy, he doesn't know what it's like to. When's the last time that guy changed a flat tire? When's the last time he went and bought a loaf of bread? When's the last time he wiped his own ass? When's the last time he actually had to worry about paying a bill? All the things that Americans, real Americans, typical Americans have to worry about. Some don't necessarily have to be like, where am I getting the money to pay this bill? Because they may be a little bit more fortunate. But that's it. Someone, $50 super chat, JT Driver said, let's go, Steve, love it. Yeah, me too. That's why I'm excited about it. But here's the thing that's really annoying to me, right? All these, these guys are all saying, what happened to the Republican Party? What happened to Americans? What happened to remembering that, you have a vested interest in what happens in this country? All these times I get on TikTok and talk with all these people, and I talk to them, and these kids are like, I'm not going to vote. I don't know. I don't follow politics. Everyone needs to follow politics. Everybody needs to. We need people to run for office is what we need. And I'm seriously going to back and campaign. This show, Wake Up America, is pretty much going to be a political show, for the next year, if it already is. But I want to interview political candidates. I want to interview people that are running for Senate. I want to go out to their rallies and film them. I want to do mini documentaries. Eden's Vision with a $5 super chat. Shout out to you, Edens. But I do. We need more candidates, and everyone's like, oh, what's next? What's next? And here's my truth. Because I can't run for office. I'm too much of a hothead. We already know that. It would never work. Someone would say, reclaim my time, and I flip that fucking desk. Be like, reclaim that. Reclaim that. You ain't reclaiming your time. You know what I mean? I don't know why I talk like Mr. T when I get all amped up. But whatever. But we do. We need politicians that are actually going to run for office, and then that'll get the fuck out of the office. Run for 2 years, or run for 2 terms. Be in there, get your shit done, do your duty, and then tap someone else, give someone else the nod, and change that office up every 2 years. We should not have people in office for 47 years. How's this guy, does he even know does Patrick Leahy even know that they have computers that you cast your vote on in some jurisdictions? Does he even know that? Because shit, when he was young enough to vote before he got in office, they probably took stencils on pieces of rock to vote. I mean, these people don't understand what it's like to actually be Americans. Not to say that they're not Americans. Yes, they're doing their civic duty, whatever you want to call it, Republican or Democrat. They're doing that. But they don't know what it's like. How can, and here's my argument, okay? Let's even look with a Democrat that doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. Tim Kaine, okay? He's my senator in Virginia. That guy's been in some form of office for well over 20 years. He was a governor, he was this, he was all these people are not even Ben Klein, who's my congressman from my district here. This guy's been in office. He was a state legislator, this and that. Oh, he's got a rich stepfather. I don't give a shit. We need to put people to run against those people. And we need to crowdfund and crowd raise to beat their opponents or them. Ben Klein, granted, he hasn't done, a full 2 terms, but he's still a career politician. You may be a lawyer, but you're still a career politician because you were in the House of Delegates for 20 plus years, or for, multiple terms, probably not 20 years. But you know what I mean? It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling that so many people are just like, you back them. People vote, and they'll be like, that's my senator, the guy that doesn't do anything. Look at the people that are stabbing everyone in the back. It's literally every single politician. And you could say, well, I voted Republican, and now we have a Democrat senator there. You still have to realize that person is still your representative. You still have a right to hold that person accountable. You still have a right to write to them and say, listen, you need to do this. It doesn't matter that we don't align politically. You are still my elected representative that covers my district. You are my whatever. You still need to do that, and you still need to be involved in politics. Yes, I know a lot of people have doubts about the election integrity and all that stuff and whether your vote matters. I could just tell you one thing with the utmost certainty. If you don't vote, your vote doesn't matter. If you don't vote, if you say, my vote doesn't matter anyway, I'm not going to do it, you are doing exactly what they want. You are proving that your vote doesn't matter by not voting. You get out there, you vote, you find out what you're educated on. And here's the thing. When I say it earlier, I don't want to be a Republican anymore. I want to start a new political party called American Citizen, where I started the PAC and all that stuff already. But the reason is because I want to be able to, and then I realized the PAC is probably not the best idea. Maybe I'll just do a 501c4, a political, whatever. But the reason that I want to do that is because I think we are so focused on dividing each other, not paying attention to the fact that you can still be a good person and a patriot as a Democrat. You just have fucked up, views. Eden's Vision, $5 super chat. Someone said, make the show about policy and not politics. Statesmen represent, not politicians. Okay. You're getting too complex. That one I have to think about. Your comment. But all right, someone else send a super chat and explain what she meant. We'll just do that. But it's crazy, really, when you think about it. You would think that it would be a common thing to say, because I'll be honest, I could get behind a Democrat that was going to unseat a shitty other Democrat. If I knew that the Democrat was not as bad as the other Democrat, Whitney Callaghan with a $10 super chat said, Biden doesn't even know what's going on. I wonder how long the Crypt Keeper has been in office in Oregon. Anyone know? Let's go, Brandon. FGB. Yeet. Someone said, Steve, what size is this sweatshirt? It's a XXX. No, yeah, 3X. 3X sweatshirt, right? I think so. I ripped the tags out. It's a 3X. What else? What else was I going to say? I lost my train of thought because I was on the super chat run. We need it. I mean, it makes me happy when we see the super chats and all that stuff. We need it. So we're not beholden to the corporate interest. And if you're watching on Facebook and you can't send super chats, we've got stars and Facebook is running a bonus. So if you send stars, it actually costs Facebook money. Now is your time. Now is your time to say, Facebook, remember when you gave me that ban? Ha! You send me 100 stars, Facebook matches that 100 stars up to $1,500 a month right now. All right, so do it. Someone said you'd vote for another Democrat. No, I said if you vote, say you have a Democrat that's running for office and you're in a blue county, right? So you know that your district has been blue. You have Republicans and they're good people, but you're not going to be able to get anyone to run. So you have blue. So you have a Democrat that's running against another Democrat. Find a Democrat that even if all their values don't, back you, you can still vote red and all that stuff. Someone said on fire. Thank you. Chris Johnson with 25 super chat. Maria with a $5 super chat. Thank you. But you know what I'm saying, right? I hope that makes. I've never voted for a Democrat in my life. I don't know if I would. I mean, I may be just talking out my ass here right now. I'll be honest. But I mean, maybe it's time to think differently. Maybe it is time to be like, okay, we need to get people in office and we may not be able to get a good, conservative person or with the same amount of values, but who aligns more? Like, think about it. If you have Tim Kaine and then you have, this state has been what? Red or blue for years I believe for a Senate. Say you have Tim Kaine and then you have a Republican. Last year's election, I think there was 4 million votes to 2 million. Republican didn't stand a chance, and they knew that going in. So here's the thing. If you know that the Republican doesn't really have a chance, right? And you vote in your primaries and all that shit, and you realize that there's a shitty candidate, because how many of you guys have looked into Republicans that are running for office and you're like, that dude is not someone I want to vote for, but I'm going to vote for him because, well, I can't vote blue. Because I know I have. And maybe that's not a great thing, especially with what I'm saying, but we shouldn't be voting on party lines. We should be voting for the best interests of us. Go out, meet your candidates at town halls. Go out and talk to them. You'd be surprised. There's some Democrats that are out there that are they're not like, they're, what is it, progressive? No, moderate? I don't know. They're more like, they're center, but they're left. They're left center, so they still register as Democrats. And I don't know. I could be talking out my ass, to be honest. I haven't met a normal Democrat, and I'm married to one. She's just not normal. So just research. and run for office. Here's the thing, if you're good, you got good credit history, especially you check that box, you're a veteran, you're married, you got cute dogs and shit, and you want to run for Senate, you want to run for Congress or something like that, call me. I seriously, I've offers out there. I'll help be your social media manager. I'll be your hype man. I'll be behind, and you're like, so my name is John Smith and I'm running for Congress. I'll be like, yeah, just being your hype man behind you. I don't care, because we need good people in office. We need young people in office, and anyone that I help will have to sign a pledge saying 2 years and I'm out, because it's not working for more. You can't be connected to real life. And I'll be honest, you can't. You can't be connected to real life if you've been in holding office for years and years. You can't. That's my opinion. But we'll have to do it. So I have contacted a bunch of senators or people that are running for office, and I'm going to try to get them on. Eden's Vision, $5 said they got rid of the word statesman, and now it's a service is lost. Got rid of the word policy and demeaned the purpose behind calling it politics. Oh, I gotcha. See, that's really deep, though. It's like hard for me to try to figure out that when I'm all hyped up. And this is the hype before I crash, by the way, because I have no caffeine in me. This is me being energetic before I'm no longer energetic. Sometimes, like when we used to cover all the riots and stuff, you guys saw it. You saw me be really good, and then I'd be like, tired as hell. But yeah, we got to do what we got to do, man. And in terms of the election, we got to take control over what's going on in this country. We really do. So, and every single person that watches this, you should know who's running already. If they've announced, you should know. Like, I already know. There's a kid that announced 2 days ago. He's up from Frederick County. He's a Navy officer that works in the intelligence community for some company as an engineer or something like that. And he's running against Ben Klein. I'm going to have him on the show. I'm going to contact him and try to put him on the show. I'll go fucking film and help him do promotional videos, because his opener video was pretty poor. Whatever I got to do to help people that are out there. I want to get Ben Klein on the show. I want to get existing. If you're running for office now, or if you guys have someone that you would love to have on my show where I just ask them the tough questions, because that's what I would like to know. I would like to know what people are going to do about this country and what they're going to do to stop. That kind of conversation that what's-his-face had, Dan Crenshaw, with that kid. I said yesterday it was a kid. It wasn't. I apologize for that. Ralph Floto said, I'm the greatest, with a $5 super chat. Thank you, bro. And I am the greatest. I know. Thank you. Pat myself on the back. What the fuck what was I saying? Oh yeah, Dan Crenshaw, saying, you don't question my faith, and yelling at that kid, 18, 10, it doesn't matter. Still very small, little person. Those are the type of people that we need to question. We need people that are going to go out. Can you imagine, say I have this idea, right, to interview candidates and actually find out who they really are instead of this fake shit that always, can you imagine now if someone that was bigger, had a bigger platform than me, or maybe did it on a national scale, actually brought politicians on, instead of just saying, hey, talk about this one specific thing, allowed them to actually talk about their policies and what they do? Can you imagine just how informative that would be? Or can you imagine if Steven Crowder devoted one episode a week to interviewing a political candidate about what's really going on in the country, and that kind of exposure that would have? It would be amazing. But for some reason, I know it doesn't make for great politics. A lot of people aren't going to tune in. But we have to. MF315 said $25 super chat saying, great show. Thanks for what you do. Thank you, man. Thank you for watching. But can you imagine or even I was talking to someone today and I told him I dream literally about waking up and having the Newsmax CEO or something call me and be like, all right, Steve, you talk a big game. Here's the keys to my network. You got 1 year. Oh my God, I already know what I would do. I've written it down. I know exactly what I would do to actually become a real, honest, credible news organization, man. And if I, and eventually I'll get there. SCO 971 with a $5 super chat. Thank you, man. Here's a funny thing, because a lot of people criticize me for my decision the other day to restrict my live feeds and just upload the videos later. There was 2 reasons why I did it. One, I was pissed off because we weren't, making money. This is a business, so I have to do that. You guys may have to forgive me for that, but I have bills to pay. I've got, all this equipment to deal with. I got employees to pay. Mean Dean with a $5 said, and you also donated $25 through PayPal. Thank you, dude. Thank you, duder. But yeah, and everyone that did the PayPal or anything, I'm sorry I can't see it. I'm gonna find a way so I could see. So if you go to f-antifa.live because you want to give big tech the middle finger, I'll find a way. So it should actually pop up on the bottom here. It won't show up in the chat, so I won't be able to see it. But I appreciate you. No, one of the good things about, making that, and I still am going to do it, but we just have big stories and they'll always be available. But, some of the live streams I'm only going to do on Citizen Stringer. Some of them will be live on social media. Some will be members only on social media. But you'll be able to watch them or listen to them as a podcast. But what I was saying is one of the good things about that is we got rid of so many trolls. Like my subscriber count went down like 100 and there's a bunch of people that are like, I didn't like your show anyway. And now you're just selling out. You're being a capitalist. It's a fucking business. What do you expect me to do? God Ride the Harley said $2 $5 super chats. For me, it's historical. It is, dude. It really is. Amazing. We're making history here with facts. Anyway, what else? So they're now voting. Oh yeah. So the roll call vote right now on motion to invoke cloture. And that's on the Senate amendment to HR 5746. Oh, wait, hold on.
The nays are 51. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn, not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
Madam President, Madam Vice President, I enter
Majority
a motion
Leader.
to reconsider the failed cloture vote.
The motion is entered.
Suckers.
Madam President.
Suckers. So now they're going to debate again, and I'm going to watch that for a little bit, and maybe I'll just keep it live. But so I think they're getting. I don't even know what the hell they're doing now. What are they doing now? So the motion to invoke cloture failed. So now they're going to. They're arguing it again. Democrat Christopher Murphy is up right now, and then they'll go from there. But anyway, that was the show. I'm going to keep this live for a little bit so we can watch all the Democrats start crying. And so this will be live on social media. The way I have this feed going, you can see here. So the way I have it, this is very complex. So right now I'm watching myself right here, right? And then I have this screen, which is my actual vMix, which is controlling this and the cameras and all that. This is sending it from here into this. This computer is actually in Georgia at our studio there. So when I want to change, like as you can see, here's the Senate thing right there. When I want to change this over, it cuts off my audio, and then I have to move that over so I can hear this. So I know it's confusing, but that's the way I have to do it. So there's going to be a couple of second delay. But I'll come back. Let's listen to this little debate, and then I'll yell at you later.
Your workplace. It doesn't give equal votes to every employee as to the direction of the company. Think about your favorite sports team. There's not a vote from all the players about the lineups or the strategy of the team. The Sunday sermon at your church isn't chosen by an online poll of the congregation. I love my kids, but they don't get an equal say with me and my wife about the rules of our house. When you look out over the long stretch of human history, it's no wonder that 99.9% of humans have lived under governments that were monarchies or sultanates or autocracies. Since the beginning of time, human beings have been naturally drawn to, or maybe have been trapped in hierarchical systems where the strong and the powerful make the decisions for everyone else. The idea that humans, both the weak and the powerful, the rich and the poor, should decide together, each person having equal weight, the course
Senate will be in order.
Of their nation, Mr. President. This idea is revolutionary. There have been experiments over the course of world history, but no nation has sustained this idea longer than this one. In historical context, our democracy should be perceived as a tiny, fragile port in the middle of a raging storm, and none of us should be surprised that once in a while some Americans, drawn to the old system of control by the strong and powerful, decide that it's time to give up and submit to the battering winds. That's the moment we're in today. Just in the last few days, former President Donald Trump, the leader of the Republican Party and their likely candidate for president in 2024, once again made clear his intent. He said last week, quote, we have to be a lot sharper the next time when it comes to counting the votes. Sometimes the vote counter is more important than the candidate. The leader of the Republican Party isn't even trying to hide his agenda any longer. State after state is changing.
Let me explain what he means. All right. Let me explain what that meant. Because I watched that live too, and I knew second Donald Trump said that, I knew what they were going to do. They were going to spin it like they just tried to do. What he's saying is if you don't trust the person counting the votes, then it doesn't matter who the candidate is, because the person counting the votes is fucking cheating. That's why he said that person is more important sometimes than the candidate. Because if you're in a corrupt thing and they're taking the votes and be like, oh, these are Republican votes, and throwing them away, then it's that reason that person's important. They know that. They understand that. But what they do is they warp what he says into something else, and then all the leftists that watch this right now and they're fawning over this guy and Tim Kaine behind him, the idiot that ran and failed with Hillary Clinton in 2016. I know a lot about him because that dude is making me want to run for Senate just so I can beat him and then resign, because there's no way I can actually run for Senate. Anyway, bullshit. Anyway, let's go back to this shit show. I can't provide the audio over. Maybe I can make it so I can. Hold on.
He's going to do in 2024. At some point, we just have to believe what we see and what we hear. And I appreciate Senator Thune coming to the floor earlier today and telling us that he believes that Joe Biden won the election, and that when he faced a close election, he submitted to the will of the voters. But Senator Thune is not the mainstream of the Republican Party today. In fact, those that believe Joe Biden won the election in the Republican Party are the dead limbs of an otherwise perfectly healthy tree. The trunk of that tree is Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all those that believe Joe Biden is the illegitimate president. That's what 70% of Republicans believe today. If mainstream Republicans in this body came to Connecticut and held a rally, a dozen people would show up. Marjorie Taylor Greene came to my state a few months ago, and 3,000 Republicans came, more than I've ever seen show up for a Republican, because that's the mainstream of the Republican Party. Today we are voting on a proposal to change our rules so that we can protect our democracy and the rules that have stood for generations, to assure that both parties continue to have a role in counting the votes. And while it feels astonishing that not a single Republican is going to join us today, not the Trump cheerleaders, nor the sometimes critics of the former president, maybe it shouldn't be that shocking. Because that natural state that billions of humans have defaulted to over the millennia, the unelected, rich, and powerful being in charge of everything and setting the rules for everyone else, it might square perfectly with Republicans' agenda. For the last decade, the entire legislative agenda here, when Republicans have been in charge, has been about giving more power, more money, more influence to the rich and powerful. They opposed President Biden's agenda to give tax cuts to the poor and the middle class, to cut profits for the drug companies, because it empowers, that agenda, often the weak and the powerless. Maybe Republicans aren't fighting to protect democracy like Democrats are, because a reversion to a world where just the rich and powerful run the country, it just isn't as scary to that side of this body as it is to this side. I wish it weren't up to us. I wish it didn't have to come to this. I wish it was not only Democrats that see the miracle of our fragile democracy, because the idea that a worker making $12 an hour gets just as much say in the future of their country as the CEO making $12 million a year, it is revolutionary. It is unnatural, and it matters more than anything, even the traditions and the rules of the Senate. I yield the floor.
Who seeks recognition?
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, I came here 9 years ago opposed to modifying the rules about the filibuster. Indeed, I signed a letter a couple of years ago saying the same thing. I understand that it can and probably will boomerang, that an elimination of the filibuster, what is today's annoying obstruction, could be tomorrow's priceless shield. I get that. I understand that it can also be a spur to bipartisanship. We all saw that several years ago on the CARES Act. The Republican leader submitted a bill. It was voted down on a filibuster initially, and then ensued a series of negotiations that improved the bill and made it a bipartisan bill that passed this body unanimously. The problem is, if it's being used as a spur to bipartisan discussions, that works. We saw it work with the CARES Act. But if it's used simply to stop something, in other words, if one side or the other just doesn't want to even talk about the subject, what you're talking about is stone cold obstruction. And that's where we are today. Unfortunately, part of this body just doesn't want to talk about the issue of voting rights. How do I know that? Because we brought up a motion to proceed 3 times and it was voted down 3 times. A motion to proceed to have a discussion about this issue. The only reason we're having this debate today is that the majority leader found a rule that, frankly, I never heard of, that enabled us to bring this bill to the floor. It wasn't because the other side said, oh, let's discuss voting rights. What we have now, Mr. President, is not a filibuster. It's a second cousin once removed of a filibuster. It doesn't require any effort. It doesn't require any speeches. It doesn't require to hold the floor. All it is a dial-in, no-work filibuster. Strom Thurmond would have loved this filibuster. He wouldn't have had to stand here for 24 hours. And I'd venture to say if we had the rules that we have today, we wouldn't have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, because it was too easy to stop anything. That's the problem. We don't really have a filibuster. The real radical change in the filibuster rule was in 1975, when they wanted to go from 2/3 of those present voting to 60 votes, but inadvertently we created the no-effort filibuster. And that's what we have now. I would submit that a talking filibuster, which is what we're going to be proposing in a few minutes, would be the real spur to bipartisanship, because everybody would want to get it over with. The minority would want to get it over with. The majority would want to get it over with and get to the point where there would be discussions. And I believe, listening to the debate today...
The senator would suspend the Senate be in order. There's a lot of conversations going. The senator is entitled to be heard.
Based upon the discussion today, I think there may be some areas where we can find agreement. The real spur to bipartisanship would be to return to the old filibuster. This is what we're going to be voting on today. And by the way, on bipartisanship, I came here to seek bipartisanship. I'm all about bipartisanship. But it strikes me as one of the deep ironies of this discussion that we are elevating bipartisanship in this body to this exalted position while these laws are being passed entirely on a partisan basis in all of these states across the country. I guess bipartisanship is an important principle in Washington, but in Atlanta and Austin, not so much. I don't get that. I think that's one of the real ironies of this situation. So, Angus, if you came here opposed 9 years ago, why are you changing now? Because what we're talking about today isn't policy, it's structure. Right. It's our democracy itself. Policy can change. If they don't like the policy we pass, they can kick us out and vote other people in. If we change the structure that diminishes the right of people to vote, it's not self-correcting anymore. The system itself is being compromised. That's what we have to talk about. And we're not only talking, most of the discussion today has been voter suppression. There's also what I call voter subversion, purging the officials in charge of elections. This democracy, I would argue, was damn near saved by a guy named Brad Raffensperger in Georgia. They've purged him, or they're going to. They've already purged him out of the system, and they're going to try to purge him out of his job. That's happening, and we talk about giving people the legislature, a partisan legislature, the ability to dismiss voting boards because they don't like what they did. We're going to see more and more voting boards, voting commissioners, certification officials being purged because they don't want to get the results that they don't agree with. The other problem here, Mr. President, that really worries me about our democracy is that the former president's efforts to undermine confidence in our elections have already convinced two-thirds of one of our great political parties that the elections were illegitimate and were rigged. Two-thirds of one of our great political parties now believes that. If these laws that are happening across the country, and they're going to continue happening, and by the way, if we give them a pass today, it's Katie bar the door over the next 6 months, then you're going to disillusion and anger and loss of trust among two-thirds of the Democratic Party and independents. And you're going to have widespread distrust of elections as the way we solve our problems in this country. And if you can't trust elections, what do? I would submit that we saw it on January 6th. Those people had been told that something was stolen from them, and they couldn't trust elections, they couldn't trust the courts, they couldn't trust the media, so they took the law into their own hands. And sadly, if this continues, we will have a broad, widespread loss of trust in our electoral process, and that's when democracy starts to fall apart. Finally, my wife says I say finally too much, it gets people's hopes up. Finally, there are some deeper constitutional issues here. The framers knew fractions. They said it takes two-thirds to pass a treaty. It takes two-thirds to impeach a president. It takes two-thirds to pass a constitutional amendment. It takes three-quarters of the states to pass a constitutional amendment. They knew fractions. They didn't apply any fractions when they talked about the passage of legislation. Why not? Because they knew it would be a disaster to have a supermajority requirement in one of the houses of the national legislature. How do I know that? Because Madison and Hamilton said it explicitly. Federalist 22 by Hamilton, Federalist 58 by Madison. Madison says the fundamental principle of free government, if you have a supermajority requirement, would be reversed. It would no longer be the majority that would rule, the power would be transferred to the minority. You can't have it both ways. It's either majority rule or it's minority rule. And the filibuster was not part of the Constitution. In fact, they expressly and explicitly rejected that idea of a supermajority requirement. It flips democracy on its head. I think we're at a hinge of history, Mr. President. I think we're at a hinge of history where our fragile experiment, and Senator Murphy is right, we're an anomaly in world history. The norm is pharaohs and kings and dictators, and now we call them presidents for life. And once people seize power, look at what, and this isn't an academic discussion, this has happened in Hungary, in Turkey, in Venezuela, in Russia. It's happened right in our personal experiences. It can happen here, and it starts with undermining free and fair elections. In the winter of 1891, the House passed a Protection Act for black voters in the South. The bill was to deal with the egregious voter suppression that was then sweeping the South in the wake of the Civil War. The bill came here and died due to a filibuster. That filibuster echoed in this country for 75 years. It took 75 years to correct the mistake that this body made with that filibuster in the winter of 1891. We're not talking about abolishing the filibuster. We're not talking about a carve-out. We're talking about allowing this body, requiring this body to debate, to argue, to make their arguments, as long as it takes. And then at the end, when the debate is exhausted, all of us have had the opportunity to speak twice, then we have a vote. And we pass legislation on the same basis that it's always been passed by a majority. Cloture has nothing to do with the passage of legislation. It's always been by a majority. Mr. President, I pray that we don't look back on this day and realize the level of the mistake that they made in 1891. Abraham Lincoln's words ring today as they did when he came to this body in December of 1862. He said, "Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation." Mr. President, I yield the floor.
The senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, I'm glad that a number of my Republican colleagues are in the chamber because I'm going to speak very briefly just to reassure you. I am not so immodest that I believe I'm going to persuade you, but I do want to try to reassure you. We're going to take up a rules reform proposal that will not blow up the Senate. We're going to take up a rules reform proposal that will not abolish the filibuster, that will not weaken the filibuster. We're going to take up a proposal that will show you, even if you're not persuaded, but I believe it will show you that we've been listening to you, that we've been listening to all our colleagues as we try to come up with a rules reform proposal to let us address the voting rights issue. I'm glad to see Senator Collins and Senator Coons here on the floor. You helped put together the 2017 letter that many of us signed, and it's very carefully worded in its 2 paragraphs. And what you got us to join together as bipartisan senators to express was our united determination to preserve the ability of members to engage in extended debate when bills are on the Senate floor. Extended debate when bills are on the Senate floor. And that's what our rules reform proposal will do. The simplest way to understand it, Senator Merkley is going to go into more detail, is it switches the current secret filibuster into a public filibuster and makes both parties have to work on the floor. The majority have to work and the minority have to work on the floor to get the kind of extended public debate that we joined together to seek in the letter in 2017. Let's face it, we don't really do this. The current rules are an obstacle to extended debate because you just vote down the motion to proceed and you can't even get on a bill. And then if you do get on a bill, the 60-vote cloture threshold is used with confidence by a filibustering minority that you don't even have to show up to debate because there's an awareness that you can't get 60 votes to terminate debate. So instead of trying to change the rule about terminating debate, which, as my colleague Senator Manchin pointed out, to terminate debate has always required more than a simple majority, we're going to restore actually having debate. And when debate is finished, The rules of this Senate have always been, when debate is finished, even after a long time, passages by simple majority. Our proposal is to restore a talking filibuster that has been the history of this Senate over the vast majority of our history, and to make a simple change to make it public rather than secret, so that our colleagues and the American public can understand and then hold us accountable for our actions. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Maine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, first let me say that I appreciate the sincerity of the senator from Virginia, my friend Senator King, in his comments about the filibuster. I'm not going to repeat the speech that I gave last week on the vital safeguards that the filibuster provides to the minority party in the United States Senate and why it makes us the greatest deliberative body in the world. Instead, Mr. President, since I've already talked on that issue, I feel compelled to respond to comments that were made by Senator Ossoff, the senator from Georgia, earlier this evening, in which he singled out 4 Republican senators, Senator McConnell, Senator Cornyn, Senator Burr, and myself, and our position on the Voting Rights Act of 1965, a seminal law that was so important in the civil rights movement in guaranteeing the right to vote for all Americans. Well, Mr. President, I was not in the Senate in 1965. I was 13. I'm not sure that the senator from Georgia was even born in 1965, but that is not really my point. My point is that of me, the senator from Georgia, Mr. Ossoff, said, Senator Collins previously said that this bill will ensure that voting rights afforded to all Americans are protected, but not anymore. Mr. President, I voted enthusiastically and did say that about the Voting Rights Act reauthorization in 2006. And surely my colleague is not confusing that bill, which was 5 pages long, 5 pages, with the bill that is before the Senate tonight, which is 735 pages long. Surely he is not confusing those 2 bills. If he is, I would like to sit down and talk with him about the enormous differences between the 2 bills. But frankly, the number of pages says it all. I do support the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and I did so, as did every other senator in 2006. But to equate that to the legislation that is before us now is simply not worthy. And had I been on the floor at that time, I might well have thought of reminding the senator that we have a rule in the Senate, Rule 19, which prohibits impugning the integrity or the motives of other senators. Not just one senator in this case, but 4 senators. So, Mr. President, let there be no mistake about it. I do support the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I supported the Voting Rights Act of 2006, as did every one of my colleagues who were mentioned by Senator Ossoff this evening. And I think it is sad that he implied otherwise about our support for such important civil rights legislation. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Six.
Mr. President.
Oh, the senator from Georgia, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Briefly, Mr. President, responding to the comments from Senator Collins from Maine, a senator for whom I have great respect and whose reputation for bipartisanship, for substance, for a thoughtful statesperson-like and patriotic approach to legislation precedes her. What I was referring to, Senator Collins, was the legislation that the Senate took up earlier this year, which, in response to the Supreme Court's invitation to Congress after the Shelby County v. Holder decision, would have updated the pre-clearance formulas that govern Sections 4 and Sections 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, such that the Department of Justice could continue to carry out its vital work pre-clearing changes to voting procedures in states and jurisdictions that exhibit a history or pattern of voter suppression. And that is an obligation that I believe this Congress has. The Supreme Court, in fact, invited us to carry out that obligation. And the Judiciary Committee, under Senator Durbin's leadership, carefully crafted legislation that we believed responded to the Supreme Court's invitation to do just that. And respectfully, Senator Collins, representing the state of Georgia, where, as I mentioned earlier, we've faced a wave of bills and now law, which everybody in my state knows are intended deliberately to disproportionately impact certain communities, laws that prior to the Shelby County decision would have been subjected to Department of Justice pre-clearance. I believe more strongly than ever that pre-clearance is necessary. And what I was respectfully noting, Senator Collins, without any implications with respect to your motives or integrity, was what I believe to be an inconsistency between voting consistently to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and lauding it as a signature civil rights achievement, but then voting not even to allow debate in this body on the legislation that was created to respond to the Supreme Court's invitation to uphold its pre-clearance provision. I yield.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, let me just note that the Federal Department of Justice, under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, has challenged the law of the state of Georgia and the state of Texas. So the idea that somehow the Justice Department no longer has authority to challenge laws with which it disagrees or regulations or practices is simply not accurate. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act provides that authority. It is in effect, and the Department of Justice, rightly or wrongly, has invoked it.
Mr. President?
Senator from Georgia.
I know we have other business to attend to in an important debate on procedure if it's ongoing, but I want to note with respect to my colleague from Maine that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is not the entirety of the Voting Rights Act. Section 4 and Section 5, which provide for the pre-clearance of changes to voting laws in jurisdictions with a history or pattern of voter suppression, are vital precisely because the post facto litigation that DOJ must embark upon to challenge state policies once they've already been enacted can be far too time-consuming to allow a remedy to emerge in the courts. And this is precisely why Section 4 and Section 5 were enacted at the time, to give the Department of Justice the power it needs to pre-clear these changes in places with a history of segregation and voter suppression. And in my state, despite all of the protestations to the contrary, we are right now witnessing a significant wave of voter suppression policies. The Department of Justice should have the authority to pre-clear those changes to law to ensure they don't disproportionately impact minority communities. So Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is important. But if Section 4 and Section 5 were also vital when you voted to reauthorize them in 2006, why aren't they vital today?
Senator from Maine.
I promised my colleagues this will be my last comment. This is entirely different from the debate on a 735-page bill. And I would invite my colleague from Georgia to review exactly what he said earlier this evening. Thank you, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator Morgan.
Mr. President, I compliment my colleagues from Maine and Georgia for engaging in perhaps the most substantive exchange I've ever witnessed in 13 years here in the Senate. Earlier this evening, one of my colleagues from across the aisle said, "Why are we going down this road?" And there have been similar questions. Why is this so important?
Do you guys not understand just how bad that is than when a sitting politician says, "I want to applaud our colleagues for one of the most substantial conversations we've ever had in America on the Senate floor in 13 years. What? That bicker back and forth? What is that, $192,000 a year for every single one of these scumbags that's sitting there talking?
This chamber, it was recognized that each of us has a stake in the integrity of the elections in other states so that the people of the United States experience equal representation. We do not have equal representation in the House today, and the gerrymandering going on now will increase that corruption. And third, and most importantly, the power to vote is the most significant right guaranteeing each citizen a voice in the direction of our democracy. It is the soul of what it means to be a democratic republic. And that power to vote is also the most important check in our system of checks and balances. With rigged elections, leaders leaning towards autocracy can keep themselves in power. But with fair elections undergirded by a free press, the people can vote out those autocratic leaders who ignore laws and undermine our institutions. It's the most important check in maintaining the integrity of our beloved republic. Let's go back in time. The rules of the Senate were forged in the Confederation Congress experience. Our founders were engaged during the time they were writing our Constitution in participating in the Confederation Congress that required a vote of 9 out of 13, 2/3 plus a bit, in order to pass any law. And it prevented them from being able to pay the pensions of our veterans. And it prevented them from raising money for Shays' Rebellion. Our founders participating in that process said this supermajority has paralyzed our ability to act. And with that in mind, they wrote our Constitution so that legislation would be passed by simple majority. That at the end of the debate, when all perspectives were duly considered, the perspective favored by the larger number would be accepted rather than the perspective favored by the smaller number. And so our founders, leaving nothing to chance, warned us in their writings, never adopt a supermajority.
They said, and I will quote James Madison, that when the general good might require new laws, the principle of free government would be reversed. It would no longer be the majority that would rule, it would be the power transferred to the minority. And he went on to say the result would be particular emergencies to extort unreasonable indulgences. Hamilton said many similar things. If a pertinacious minority can control the opinion of the majority, the result will be tedious delays and continual negotiation and intrigue and contemptible compromises. He noted the supermajority's real operations to embarrass the administration and destroy the energy of government. And anyone who has seen the energy drained out of this chamber by nothing happening, day after day after day, when we have important issues to face, can understand just how right the founders were. So, in writing up the guidelines and the vision for the initial Senate, our leaders came up with a Senate code. And that Senate code was hear all perspectives. In fact, guaranteeing in Rule 4 of the original rules that every senator will have the right to speak twice to a question. In addition, they put into the rules the previous question, just in case they couldn't get the debate to wrap up so they could get to that all-important vote to determine where the greater number stood. And Thomas Jefferson put into the rule book, the manual for the rules in 1801, no one is to speak impertinently or beside the question, superfluously or tediously. Hear the debate, consider all perspectives, and take the option the greater number favor. That Senate code endured in a powerful fashion for a very long time. In 1806, Aaron Burr was rewriting the rules, and he said, you know, we've never needed to use the previous question rule in the book because we hear everyone, we hear those perspectives, we take a vote, and we go forward, so we don't need the previous question. And it was dropped from the rule book. And when I hear folks say the Senate never had a simple majority to close debate, they had the Senate code, and they had a rule, and then they said, we don't need the rule because we have the Senate code. And that code continued to endure, which the full understanding of the members of this chamber was they had no right to prevent the Senate from getting to a final vote. That code was so powerful that in the mid-1800s, when senators started to speak at length in order to make it very difficult to get to a final vote, the press called it piracy. You may wonder, where did that term filibuster come from? That term is a corruption of the term freebooter, the term for piracy. The piracy was senators breaking the Senate code. That was the piracy. But still, it happened on rare occasion, and the code was stretched, but not really broken through the 1800s, except on civil rights. And what happened in our history on civil rights? Well, you had John C. Calhoun leading the nullification movement that said, hey, states don't have to accept any given federal law. They can choose and pick which ones they want. And initially, that nullification movement was in order to block laws that put tariffs on imported products that strengthened the North and cost more funds to the South, increased the prices of goods. But then it turned to the question of protecting slavery. And nullification continued, and even went so far as to say states should have the right to succeed if they don't like those federal laws. And then we had a civil war over that question. And that was the end of nullification. But it was not the end of attack on civil rights. So what did we see after the Civil War? We saw a group of states make it harder for individuals to register to vote. We saw a group of states make it hard for Black Americans to get public accommodations. We saw a group of states make it easier to re-enslave Black Americans under the Black Codes, utilizing the slavery clause of the 13th Amendment. And Congress responded. The House responded. This Senate responded and said, no, we are here to defend the Constitution, that every person is created equal and every person's rights must be protected. That's what this chamber, the Senate, did. In 1875, the House passed the Civil Rights Act on public accommodations, guaranteeing access to all public accommodations for all Americans. The House voted 152 to 99, and it came to the Senate, and the Senate voted 38-26, simple majority. Although there were senators here who desperately hated public accommodation bills because it would end discrimination in the South, they did not filibuster because the Senate code said after all views are heard, you can hold a simple majority vote. The Senate code held, but it didn't hold in 1891. In 1890, Henry Cabot Lodge, down the hall in the House, introduced what became known as the Lodge Bill, and it said, in order to protect the foundation of our nation, there can be federal supervision upon request to make sure registration is fair, to make sure the voting process is fair, and to make sure the counting process is fair. And the bill came here to the Senate. And a bipartisan group filibustered that bill of Southern Democrats and Western senators known as the Silver Senators. And they were anxious to get on to a bill about silver coinage, support the silver mining in the West. And that bill was eventually tabled. 1891, the Senate Code was broken on civil rights and continued to be broken through 1965. 1922, the Dyer Anti-Lynching Act. It was filibustered. 1934, the Costigan-Wagner Anti-Lynching Act. It was filibustered. 1942, the Anti-Poll Tax Bill that put a price on being able to access the ballot box. It was filibustered. And on and on. With the exception of a one-week delay in a bill for arming commercial ships in 1917, virtually every filibuster was to deny Black Americans the right to vote because in lieu of nullification, there had to be a strategy for certain senators to make sure that Black Americans didn't get their civil rights. That is the sorry chapter of that part of our American history. 3 generations through 1965 paid the price of denied opportunities. The Senate Code on every other issue essentially survived until 1971 within our lifetimes. 1975-71, we started to see the filibuster go to not just 1 or 2 filibusters a year, but to 12, a dozen. Imagine that. And 1974 to 32. And that was just so outrageous because each one takes up a week. And so this Senate said that is unacceptable. So we must reform the rules. And it led to the March 1975 rule reform where they went from 2/3 of those voting to 60 members voting. Well, the result is that law backfired. To quickly look at it, cloture on amendments, each one taking up a week, expanded from some 6 times an entire decade in the 1960s to 143 times in the 2010s. From motion to proceed, which is the ability to prevent debate from ever happening. So the filibuster to promote debate was used to kill debate on the motion to proceed. It was used 10 times in the 1960s, 175 times in the 2010s. And on nominations, it went from once in the 1960s to 545 times in the 2010s. And how did it happen that it expanded in the 2010s? Well,
all right, guys, I burned out. I'm not going to end this, though. I'm going to keep it live stream, and I'm just going to go home, so you won't hear my wonderful voice anymore. But I'll keep it live for everyone on the Wake Up America podcast channel. My show, even though that was before this, I will upload tomorrow as its own episode. What I would ask all you guys to do is share it. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll leave this one up, but I won't. I'll probably just make a new episode. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I'm getting tired. But yeah, if you want to support our channel, visit f-antifa.live, or that's for financial support. You could do that over there, or sign up for a membership, citizenstringer.tv, where we stream this stuff all day long. Live hearings, news, broadcast, 24/7 live feeds over there. Make sure you also check out citizenstringer.com. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm going to leave this up. I'll watch it from my house because I'm kind of interested, but I'm getting tired. I want some cookies and I want to go to bed. So now I got to drive home, which is like a mile down the road, but that's okay. It is what it is. You know what I mean? All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.
So we have both done it, but the Senate is blowing up now. You know, that original Congress, the Senate, first term, it said there were about 4 cabinet members to confirm, plus ambassadors and some judges. 4. We have over 1,000 positions now. It's completely out of sync. The gears don't match. And every time there's a filibuster and a nomination, it's another week lost. So the Senate is now paralyzed, because here is the interesting prospect and the unfortunate reality of 60 votes. The interesting prospect is that a majority of less than 60 has to reach out to the minority to get something done. And that sounds like it's going to increase cooperation and negotiation. But the unfortunate reality in our tribal partisan politics is the minority looks at that and says, if we can hold 41 senators from agreeing to close debate, we can paralyze the majority. That is the overwhelming impact, is paralysis and accentuation of partisanship of our current filibuster. Today's debate, it's not about a filibuster versus no filibuster. It's about fixing a broken Senate. It's about the difference, as my colleague from Virginia has said, from the secret no-show filibuster to the public talking filibuster. Before 1975, people who wanted to extend debate had to actually debate. What a notion. They had to show up. And that is painful and difficult to maintain continuous debate. And so there's an incentive to negotiate. But when there's a no-show, no-effort filibuster, where those who say they want to debate are off on vacation because 60 votes is required with or without them, there's no incentive to negotiate. So if you believe the Senate should be a place that encourages negotiation, we need a public filibuster, not a secret, silent filibuster. If you believe that the public should be able to participate in our process, we need not a secret, silent filibuster, but a public talking filibuster. We're here day after day, week after week. We're debating the issue. We're raising amendments. We're considering amendments. And what is the result? The citizens weigh in. They say, finally, they're considering it. Finally, they're debating it. Finally, they're going to take a vote. Now we can weigh in effectively in this moment. So this is about restoring, reinvigorating debate, restoring the public role, creating an incentive to negotiate, creating incentive for both sides to work to reach an accommodation. Now, my Republican friends have made much today of Democrats signing a letter saying that they are determined to, quote, preserve the ability of members to engage in extended debate. Interesting. Preserve the ability of members to engage in extended debate. The ability to preserve the ability to engage in extended debate means we need the talking public filibuster, not the secret silence filibuster, which requires no debate at all. So to my Republican colleagues who signed this letter, this is your opportunity to do what you said. Vote for the principle that the majority leader is going to be laying out forthwith. So, colleagues, if you believe in the founders' vision of this Senate, of hearing everyone and hearing everyone well, but eventually getting to a final vote, if you believe in the Senate Code, which stood up for so long, not even needing a rule to enforce it, except for civil rights, it held up through 1971. If you want more debate, and you want people who want to debate to have to show up to debate, support the talking filibuster. If you believe there should be an incentive for both the majority and the minority to negotiate, support the talking filibuster. If you believe the public should have the ability to see us debating issues, then support the talking filibuster. And my colleagues have said we must defend the minority leverage. Amen to that. That is why in 2011 I put forward in this chamber the talking filibuster and said we need to defend the minority's right to participate. Today, we have another opportunity to defend the minority's participation, to speak at length for at least twice on any given question on through a complex bill. But that, colleagues, depends upon ending the era of the secret, silent source of partisanship and paralysis that we currently have and replacing it with the talking public filibuster. I encourage you all to stand today for the Senate to work and for the Senate, most importantly, to defend the fundamental rights of every American to access the ballot box. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I could just yield for 1 second, sir.
The senator from West Virginia.
Senator Merkley, was it possible we could enter into a talking filibuster now without a rules change? Couldn't we start a talking filibuster right now without a rules change?
To my colleague from West Virginia, the challenge that we have today is that in the course of Senate debate, it is never possible to get to a debate on the final question. And the proposal that the majority leader is putting forward is saying it is time to get to that final debate. And on that final debate, every senator can speak twice. I can tell you, leadership of both sides probably is nervous about the idea of 100 senators speaking twice at length. But that is the single innovation of the talking filibuster, is to say that there will be a purity debate in which we will consider final passage with all 4 of the mechanisms that currently exist, 3 that were created at the foundation. And that is the break-in debate, and that is the 2-speech rule, and that is unanimous consent, and the 60 votes that was created in 1975.
As I understand the way this rule reads right now, sir, during which all amendments, motions, and points of order are not in order, and any appeal shall be determined without debate.
Absolutely.
That doesn't allow any amendments whatsoever.
And no. the vision of this.
That's the way this one is, what we're voting on right now.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
I'm saying that's what we're voting on right now.
What we're voting on right now is to go to final passage with continuous debate, and the majority leader's team has crafted this to ensure continuous debate.
No amendments. No amendments.
That would be, had we gotten to the bill and been able to engage.
No amendment. Well, we never had amendments on the bill. No amendments, no motions, no points of order.
To my colleague from West Virginia, your question is, what are the characteristics that define continuous debate on final passage? And it is defined as without interruptions that take us in other directions in the question of final passage of the bill.
Mr. President.
The distinguished Republican leader.
Well, I think we can all agree on one thing. It's been a long day. Almost everybody's had something to say. And the reason for that is this is an important day in the history of the Senate. It could be argued it's the most important day in the history of the Senate as an institution. This very day that we are just wrapping up is in all likelihood the most important day in the history of the Senate as an institution. This evening, fewer than 60 senators voted to advance a piece of legislation, so it didn't move forward. It's pretty common around here. Happens frequently. In fact, it happened less than a week ago, as we know, when our Democratic colleagues used the 60-vote threshold to block sanctions against Putin's pipeline. In 2020, the Democrats used the filibuster multiple times to delay the CARES Act, kill Senator Tim Scott's police reform bill, block bipartisan protections for unborn children. Senate minorities can apply the brakes to small majorities. Senate minorities can apply the brakes to small majorities. This institution makes major changes earn major buy-in. This institution requires that major changes receive major buy-in. For decades, Americans on all sides acknowledge this. Believe it or not, 15 years ago, several of us were here 15 years ago, there were 180 civil rights organizations, 180 civil rights organizations weighed in support of the filibuster. Because at that particular point, the filibuster was being used to stop judges appointed by Bush 43. So over 100 civil rights organizations wrote us a letter saying the filibuster is indispensable. It served their purpose at that particular time. For decades, literally decades, senators on both sides agreed. We've quoted each other back and forth here. Eloquent filibuster defenses from colleagues across the aisle when it benefited them to make those speeches. But colleagues, leaders' true colors are not revealed when long-term principles and short-term power line up together. That's easy. When what you're trying to achieve lines up with the tactics. The measure of a leader is not what he or she chooses, it's what they choose when those two paths diverge, go in a different direction. Now, half of us on this side of the aisle just spent 4 years, 4 years, when we were in the majority and we had a president of our party asking us to do what they're trying to do tonight, and we had a one-word answer. No. No. We're not going to fracture the institution to achieve some short-term advantage. And actually, astonishingly enough, Grassley was here then. In 1994, the best Republican off-year election in arguably in American history, took the House for the first time in 40 years, got the majority back in the Senate. Tom Harkin, Chuck Grassley's colleague from Iowa, a Democrat, on day one of that session, through the regular order, offered a rules change to lower the threshold to 51. So who would have benefited from that? This brand new, enthusiastic majority, just having swept the country, would have been the principal beneficiaries of lowering the threshold to 51. Not one single Republican in the new majority voted to give themselves an advantage that would break the Senate. Not one. So we've been consistent on this side of the aisle in support of this institution as long as I've been here. They face the same decision now. They got a choice. They can break the institution to achieve what they want, or defend the institution. And so they pivoted, and that's why so many of them look so foolish, because they've been on the opposite side of this. Not a long time ago, but quite recently. And so they tried to carve out a special category here, that somehow this issue is different from all the other issues and should be treated differently. Well, on the merits, as we've discussed ad nauseum here, this is something they've been trying to do for a long time. The rationale for it has changed periodically, depending upon what seemed to make sense. But doll it up any way you choose to, this is a plot to break the Senate. A plot to break the Senate. Over the issue they've chosen, 0.5% of American people say election law is their most pressing concern. 0.5% of the American people. Actually, Americans, as a number of you have said during the course of this long day, believe voting laws are actually too loose rather than too strict. And as you've said over and over and over again, Georgia's new law is arguably more progressive than New York or Delaware. All of you have said that all day long. And this is the basis upon which the President of the United States calls people like us racist, traitors, over this, over how many days of early voting you're going to have? Really? This is the basis on which 40-plus Senate Democrats want to not only break their word, but break the Senate. Now, the so-called talking filibuster proposal, smoke and mirrors. Just smoke and mirrors. There's really only one question we're dealing with here, just one, not complicated. Will it take 60 votes to pass massive changes, or a simple majority to ram them through? That's what's at stake here, nothing else. Will slender majorities need to build coalitions across the aisle or not? Will huge chunks of federal law reverse themselves whenever gavels change hands? We've talked about this all day long. That's what this is about. But colleagues, something even more fundamental is at stake tonight. Everyone in this chamber knows that factional fires are burning hot all across our country. As I look around, I don't know if many of us have actually gathered in this chamber since January 6th of last year. We were all in here then. I stood up that day and I said self-government requires shared respect for basic ground rules. I said we couldn't keep drifting into two tribes and delegitimizing the few institutions we still share. Yes, the divisions run deep. Compromise is certainly challenging. But it would not serve a divided country if two factions take turns ruling over one another with an iron fist. Here is a solution for a divided country. Thoughtful compromise everywhere we can agree. And when we can't agree, it just doesn't happen. The American people are closely divided. We're reflected here with a 50-50 Senate for the longest time in American history. There's not a mandate to fundamentally transform America into something it's never been. Not what the voters voted for. We've got here a narrow majority trying to jam through one after another proposals to fundamentally turn us into something we've never been. Well, here's the good news. The framers custom built the Senate to stop this kind of thing. That's why this institution was constructed in the first place. We're sitting in the place designed to stop this kind of thing. And we have an opportunity to do it here tonight. This is the first time in history that a Senate majority leader who is supposed to safeguard this institution has convinced nearly all of his party to attack the institution. That hadn't happened before. Tonight, for the first time in history, almost an entire political party will write in permanent ink that they would shatter the soul of the Senate for short-term power. Shatter the soul of the Senate for short-term power. But a brave bipartisan majority of this body is about to stop them. About to stop them. We'll stop the Democratic leader from silencing the voices of millions upon millions of Americans who have a right to be heard in this chamber, many of them represented by us who come from small states. They derisively look down on us as a flyover territory, a place nobody wants to stop. The Senate was designed to represent those people. Every state gets 2 senators. Some states have only 1 House member, but 2 senators. We're here to protect Middle America. And the supermajority threshold in the Senate makes that even more possible. So they can't run roughshod over us. They can't run roughshod over us and the people we represent. When our country needs leaders to fight the fires of factionalism, almost half the Senate over here wants to literally dump more gasoline right on top of it. when our institutions needed defending, a sitting president and a majority leader have made smashing the Senate an unofficial part of their party's platform. The President of the United States and the majority leader of the Senate have made breaking the Senate a central part of their plan for America. Thanks to the courageous position of at least a few of their members, they will not succeed. This country will be shielded from their radicalism tonight. And make no mistake about it, this is radicalism designed to fundamentally change America in every conceivable way to the disadvantage of virtually all of the constituents represented by people on this side of the aisle, and theirs as well, if they were willing to admit it. So the Senate will be saved tonight. The Senate will be saved tonight. America can breathe a sigh of relief. This radicalism will have been stopped, and it's a good day for America. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Quote, the denial of this sacred right to vote is a tragic betrayal of the highest mandates of our democratic tradition. A tragic betrayal of the highest mandates of our democratic tradition. Mr. President, those were the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. in his speech where he implored the federal government, and especially Congress, to take action on a simple request. Quote, give us the ballot. Today, the American people are saying the same thing. Give us the ballot. Let us not sink into the abyss of voter suppression. Give us the ballot. A few hours ago, this chamber, with the eyes of the nation upon it, and with the evidence of voter suppression laid bare before it, with very little refutation from the other side, they don't discuss the issues going on in the states, took a vote to move to final passage on the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It received 50 votes, and with the Vice President, we would have had a majority. Unfortunately, under the current rules of the Senate, the door is closed to moving forward on these laws, so much part of the core values of our country. But make no mistake, on voting rights, inaction is not an option. Inaction is not an option. And now the Senate must rise to the occasion. The only way to achieve our goal of passing voting rights, ending dark money, and ending partisan gerrymandering is by changing the rules, because our colleagues from the other side of the aisle don't want to join us in these noble endeavors. This evening, we have proposed a modest, one-time change of Senate rules to establish a talking filibuster for this voting rights legislation. It fundamentally says if you want to block something as sacred as voting rights, you must do it out in the open. You must debate it and show the American people where you stand. You can't sit in your office and block everything. In short, every senator will be allowed to speak twice on final passage of voting rights legislation. They can speak as long as they want, days if they can muster it. But all other dilatory tactics, any dilatory amendments, motions, and points of order shall be deemed out of order, and any appeals shall be determined without debate. After each member has had their say, it will be time to vote, and only 50 votes will be required for passage. Mr. President, this is a very simple, limited proposal, and it only applies to the voting right bills before us today. Now look, there is no denying that members of this body have divergent views about whether the filibuster in the 21st century is a good thing or a bad thing. Some have argued that it actually helps bring us together. Something I don't agree with, in which I have not seen evidence, as the eloquent statement by the senator from Oregon we have just seen. But even for those who feel that the filibuster is a good thing and helps bring us together, I would ask this question: isn't protecting voting rights, the most fundamental wellspring of this democracy, more important than a rule in this chamber? Let me say that again. Even if you think the filibuster is a good thing, isn't protecting voting rights and preventing their diminution more important, particularly when this rule was not always in existence and was not envisioned by the founders? That is the key question we should each ask ourselves. To be clear, minority rights are a vital feature of this chamber, but the Senate was never envisioned to allow an absolute minority party veto. Never. In fact, the founders expressly rejected the inclusion of a supermajority requirement for the Senate. Hamilton called the idea poison. If there's anything undermining the spirit of the Senate today, it's frankly the way things work right now. It's time for the Senate to adapt, to meet the challenge of the modern age. Robert Byrd himself recognized this truth, that Senate rules must sometimes change. And our proposal today is a limited, carefully tailored step we can take to make the rules of the Senate achieve this body's original purpose. Finally, there are some who fear the consequences of passing this bill with no support from the other party. I would certainly prefer Republicans work with us on this issue, and voting rights has always been a bipartisan issue in the past. But we must be honest. We have made many earnest efforts to draft and debate bipartisan legislation that deals with voter suppression, dark money, partisan gerrymandering. But those efforts by many members of our caucus have come up with no takers. The old GOP worked with Democrats on voting rights for decades, but unfortunately, that is not the case today. In the words of the late Senator Wagner, whose seat I hold, delivered on this floor nearly 80 years ago, quote, "Unity in a democracy is not achieved by sidestepping and ignoring issues. That is false unity. That is only the illusion of unity. Unity in a democracy is the unity which is achieved by facing issues, by threshing out our differences, and by standing upon the decision of the majority. Again, unity in a democracy is not achieved by sidestepping issues." Fittingly, he spoke those words in the face of a filibuster on the anti-poll tax legislation. Tonight, Let us sidestep voting rights no more. The question before the Senate is how we will find a path forward on protecting our freedoms in this turbulent 21st century. The only choice to move forward on these vital issues is to change the rules in the modest way we have proposed. My colleagues, history is watching us. Let us choose in favor of our democracy. Let us stand up and defend the precious right to vote. Now, Mr. President, I move to proceed to the motion to reconsider the vote by which cloture was not invoked on the motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 5746, the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act.
And the question is on the motion to proceed to the motion to reconsider.
Mr. President, I make a point of order that for this message from the House, with respect to H.R. 5746, the only debate in order during consideration of the message be on the question of adoption of the motion to concur in the amendment of the House. Further, that no amendments, motions, or points of order be in order, and that any appeals be determined without debate.
Following the rules of the Senate, the point of order is not sustained as it is a compound motion that would require consent.
Mr. President, I appeal the ruling of the chair.
The question is, shall the ruling of the chair stand as the decision of the Senate?
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be, and there is, and the clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Braun. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Cappuccio. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crabo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Manchin. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Portman. Mr. Reed. Mr. Risch. Mr. Romney. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sass. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Sinema. Ms. Smith. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warnock. Ms. Warren. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Blackburn, Blunt, Bozeman, Braun, Burr, Capito, Cassidy, Collins, Cornyn, Cotton, Kramer, Crapo, Cruz, Daines, Ernst, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Haggerty, Hawley, Hoeven, Heidsmith, Inhofe, Johnson, Kennedy, Lankford, Lee, Lummis, Manchin, Marshall, McConnell, Moran, Murkowski, Paul, Portman, Risch, Romney, Rounds, Rubio, Sass, Scott of Florida, Scott of South Carolina, Shelby, Sinema, Thune, Tillis, Toomey, Tuberville, Wicker, Young. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Baldwin, Bennett, Blumenthal, Booker, Brown, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Coons, Cortez Masto, Duckworth, Durbin, Feinstein, Gillibrand, Hassan, Heinrich, Hickenlooper, Hirono, Kane, Kelly, King, Klobuchar, Leahy, Lujan, Markey, Menendez, Merkley, Murphy, Murray, Ossoff, Padilla, Peters, Reed, Rosen, Sanders, Schatz, Schumer, Shaheen, Smith, Stabenow, Tester, Van Hollen, Warner, Warnock, Warren, Whitehouse, Wyden.
On this vote, the yeas are 52, the nays are 48. The decision of the chair stands as a judgment of the Senate. There will be order. The Senate will be in order. The majority leader.
Mr. President, I withdraw the motion to proceed to the motion to reconsider the failed cloture vote.
The motion was withdrawn.
Now, for the information of the Senate, there will be no further roll call votes tonight. Senators should expect a roll call vote at noon tomorrow on the confirmation of Holly Thomas to be the U.S. Circuit Judge for the Ninth Circuit. And, Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.
It won't be soon, unless you want.